What is going on with trademarks? Seems like everybody's having trademark drama right now. And I think some people think that you can trademark anything that comes into your head. And I'm no lawyer, but I don't think that's true. It's very clear that trademarks are misunderstood. Let's fix that. Hello and welcome. My name's Shelby, and I explain things. I usually thank you guys at the end of my video, but I wanted to thank you at the beginning. I am a new channel. I've been doing this for about 2 months, and to everyone who's watched a video, who's subscribed, commented, liked, watched even 1 minute of it, thank you so much. I am so appreciative. I've put a lot of work into these videos, but I am a brand new channel. So unless you know me personally, hello, you are taking a chance on a new channel. And if you've done that, if you've taken a chance, and if you've subscribed, oh my God, you're my hero. I really, really appreciate it. So if you like this video, please check out some of the other ones. I've got about 2 months worth of content, and I'm going to keep trying to do it every week. So trademarks have been confusing the hell out of me. It seems like every week now there's different trademark drama, people trademarking things that I think are just common phrases and then sending out cease and desist. It's all gotten very messy. I'm not a lawyer in any way, so I've been feeling a bit lost. So I decided to do some research, look some stuff up, and kind of dig into some of these trademark stories. First thing we need to talk about is trademark versus copyright. They are similar in that they both protect intellectual property, or IP, but they protect different things. There is some crossover, which can get confusing, but in general, trademark is about branding and copyright is about finished works. Again, there's overlap and gray area, but in general. So if we look at Disney, some of their trademarks include their Disney logo, the phrase happiest place on earth, and the word frozen in this font and style. Those are all Disney protected trademarks. Some of their copyrights include the movie Frozen, so the movie as a whole or any of its clips, the recordings of people singing the songs that appear in the movie, and the sheet music of the songs that appear in the movie. Those would all be protected under copyright. Another good person to look at is Taylor Swift, T-Swift, if you will. Some of her trademarks include the word Swiftie, some of her lyrics, and her signature. Some of her copyrights include her songs, the music and lyrics, her music videos, and the master recordings. She had that huge legal fight a few years ago about trying to own her masters. That was her trying to own the copyright of the songs that she wrote and recorded. So trademarks are generally words, slogans, designs, logos, but they can also be really weirdly specific. There have been some certain sounds that have been trademarked, some certain colors that have been trademarked, although that's very difficult, and sometimes even scents. A signature scent can be trademarked in certain instances, but they're individual pieces of a brand, not finished works. And something not a lot of people understood, and I certainly didn't understand, is that when you trademark something, you trademark it for certain categories. So we talked about Taylor Swift. If she has a trademark on the word Swiftie, she has it for things like clothing, notebooks, music, all those kind of things that she would be involved in with her work and her merch. She does not own the trademark for the word Swiftie for car manufacturing. It's the way that you can have Stanley Water Bottle, Stanley Insurance, Stanley Tiny Homes, and Stanley Restaurant. And all of those can have trademarks and they don't interfere with each other. Because trademarks are about branding, trademarks are designed to avoid customer confusion. One of my favorite skincare brands is Prequel. I use this face wash every day. It's their cleanser. I love it, and it's so shiny. This is not an ad. It's not sponsored. They don't know I exist. I just picked a random product in my house that I use every day. Now imagine if someone made this face wash. Graphic design is my passion. Theoretically, if someone saw this in a store, especially if it's a store that also sells Prequel like Target, they could see this on the shelf, think, oh, Prequel changed their branding and their packaging. Cool. Grab this face wash, hate it, and then be like, well, I'm never using Prequel again. So trademarks also protect consumers. It makes sure that you know exactly what you're getting. If you pick up the Prequel face wash, you know that it's from Prequel. So that's some trademark basics. We're going to talk about a few different trademark cases today. Some you may have heard of, but we're going to kind of dig into what they say about trademarks. And there's one that you may not have heard of that I find very interesting. There's also one where my opinion may get me into some trouble. So let's start with Hot Girls Read. A little backstory on all the hot girl trends. If you're not aware, in 2019 and 2020, Megan Thee Stallion went insanely viral for her song Hot Girl Summer. She had also used hot girl in a song before, so it was very much her thing, her phrase. It inspired a million hashtags, a million different hot girl something trends, and that included the online book community, sometimes referred to as book talk. Thousands and thousands of people used the phrase hot girls read. People were using it as a hashtag, as a caption. They were putting it on bookmarks, on stickers, on sweatshirts. There was even a podcast. This was everywhere. And in most people's opinion, this was a phrase that belonged to the community. But then a creator named Allie Rose showed up. Now, Allie Rose and her company, Allie Rose Co., has been selling bookish things for several years now. Bookmarks, sweatshirts, and she sold a lot of items that said, Hot Girls Read. And in 2026, she announced that she had secured the trademark for Hot Girls Read, a phrase that she did not invent. So this brings up the question, can you trademark a trend? Apparently the answer is yes. And to that I say, what the why was this allowed? Do you guys know that Lizzo successfully trademarked 100% that bitch? A phrase that she also did not invent. She have made it surge in popularity, but she did not invent that phrase. The U.S. Patent and Trade Office, or the USPTO, is who gives out and approves trademarks here in the US. And we know they have some standards. They rejected LeBron James when he tried to trademark Taco Tuesday. And they turned down Cardi B when she tried to trademark, I can't do it. So to me, some of this is the USPTO's fault. They are at least partially to blame. When you apply for a trademark, the USPTO checks to see if anything similar has been trademarked, because if it already exists, you can't have it. But it is on you, the applicant, to check if there is common law usage, if people are using it out in the world in this category. So for things like sweatshirts and bookmarks and stuff, Allie Rose, it was on her to check and see if other people were using this phrase on their merch. They were. A lot of people were. Now, a trademark attorney would normally walk you through this process and help you figure out all the things you need to check, including common usage. So my question to Allie Rose is, did you use a trademark attorney? And if you did, why do they suck? It's very unclear how much the USPTO checks for common law usage. It seems like not much. I suspect we're seeing something we've seen before with government entities where they really struggle to keep up with modern trends and modern technology. So I don't know if anyone at the USPTO knows how to check how popular things are on TikTok or Twitter or Etsy. It was like when people first started going to the police for online threats and bullying and harassment, and the police would be like, "What's Twitter?" So I suspect, with my non-expert opinion, that the USPTO is not equipped or prepared to judge whether a phrase is commonly used in online spaces. So what ends up happening is we have trademarks that get approved, but probably won't stand up in court, so people have to spend money challenging it if they want to. So we just end up adding more nonsense to an overburdened legal system. Or they never get challenged because the people who they're sending cease and desist letters to don't have the money to go through the legal process. And if no one has the resources to fight it in court, they get away with it. I am not an expert in anything I'm talking about today, but particularly not in the workings of the USPTO. I am sure they are underfunded and understaffed, but to my completely non-expert opinion, it seems like making it a little bit harder to get a trademark may save everybody some time. Allie Rose got a lot of backlash very quickly, and soon after announcing that she got the trademark, she announced that she was abandoning the trademark. I don't know if her business is going to bounce back to what it once was, because her business was once very popular. I hope it doesn't ruin her for life, but I also hope that she learned a big lesson from this. Next up on our hot girl journey, we have Hot Girl Walk. This one is slightly different because as far as we can tell, this girl did invent the phrase hot girl walk. I wasn't able to find any instances of it being used online before her. This is Mia Lind. And again, as far as we know, she was the first one to use hot girl walk in 2021. She started posting about her hot girl walks, which was a system that she invented, where you don't just go for a walk, you think about specific things like gratitude and goals and confidence. And like many hot girl whatever things of the time, it became a huge trend. And on the back of her phrase becoming a trend, Mia made it into an entire brand. She organizes events, some of which raise money for charity. She has walking guides and merch, and she wrote a book for some reason. So again, she did not invent the hot girl whatever. I think we can owe that to Megan Thee Stallion. Nor did she invent walking as an exercise, despite what she implies sometimes.
So let's talk about what it's like to create a viral phenomenon. At the time, there was a huge stigma surrounding walking. Nobody was walking for fitness or for fun. It was COVID, and so walking only existed as like the post-dinner thing that your mom made you do.
But she did invent the phrase hot girl walk, and she went on to trademark it. Should she have been able to trademark this phrase? Because it had become such a trend, and because it had really taken on a life of its own, and because it was so popular in the community, I would say no. I don't think it should have been approved, but like we talked about with Hot Girls Read, we don't always get what we want. Legally, Mia has been going after people for years. There are rumors that her father is her lawyer, which makes sense why she's able to take so much legal action and send so many cease and desist letters, but I don't know if that's actually true. I know he is a lawyer. I don't know if he is her lawyer in this sense for her company. And Mia was doing this quietly in the background, sending cease and desist letters, building her brand, and then she hit some bad luck. Because she sent a cease and desist letter to someone right around the same time as Allie Rose was doing all of the Hot Girls Read thing. So it was a bit of a perfect storm for her to start getting some publicity about it. Another piece of bad luck that Mia has is that she is, how do I put this? Unlikable. And it's not just me that thinks that.
The more I went through her videos, the more I found her to be utterly insufferable. Just listen to some of these video hooks.
5 years ago, I literally invented walking. Here's everything that's happened since then. I'm literally famous for hot girl walking 15 to 20,000 subs daily.
So this is true. I did create and coin the hot girl walk. Yes, believe it or not. This came from this brain right here. Let's talk about it.
This kind of energy I just can't stand.
She often comes off as arrogant, immature, and self-involved. Mia has sent cease and desist letters to all different events and all different people all over the country, but the one that got the most attention was the one for an event in Indianapolis. This was a free community event. No money, no merch, just something that a local woman was organizing for women of the community to come together and walk. And she called it a hot girl walk. Now, remember that Trademark is about avoiding confusion. So, to give her some credit, I do understand somewhat why Mia thinks she has to protect her brand. If someone has a hot girl walk in Indianapolis and something terrible happens or there's some sort of terrible publicity, that would reflect poorly on her brand, whether they were connected or not. So I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I say I understand that she needs to protect her brand's reputation. The problem is, I don't think people associate Hot Girl Walk with her. Until she got all this publicity for trademarking it, most people had never heard of her. So it brings me to the question, what makes a trademark distinct? Something that's often cited in court cases is the Abercrombie distinctiveness scale. Yes, that Abercrombie. Breaks down trademarks into 5 categories. So over here, we have the most distinct trademarks, the one that are easiest to defend in court. And then over here, we have the least distinctive, the ones that are hardest to protect and win in court. The most distinct are called fanciful. These are completely made up names that don't have any meaning outside of this brand. So things like Aveeno, Google, Pepsi. Those are all words that were made up specifically by these companies. Next up is arbitrary. So it's a word that exists, but it has nothing to do with what the company does. So the best example of this is Apple. Apple, the word, obviously existed long before the computer company. It was a fruit, but it had nothing to do with computers. So Apple, when it comes to computer, can only mean one company. Amazon is the name of a river and a rainforest, so that word already existed. But when it comes to selling books and selling things online, you know it's about Amazon, the company. Same with Prequel, one of my favorite skincare brands. Prequel is a word that already existed, but it had nothing to do with skincare. So these are arbitrary trademarks and are pretty strong. Not as strong as fanciful, made up words, but pretty strong. Next are suggestive. So these are things where the name kind of hints at what it is, kind of gives you a little taste. Netflix, internet, flicks, like movies. Internet movies, Netflix. Coppertone, copper, like a suntan, tone, the color of your skin. Lip smacker makes lip balms. The name kind of hints at what it is. Next up are descriptive. You can get these trademarks, but they are hard to defend and they are harder to get. These are things where you are just straight up saying what something is. American Airlines is an airline in America. Kentucky Fried Chicken. They make fried chicken from Kentucky. Bath and Body Works. They make things that work for your bath and your body. So there are some extra rules with this one. You must have been using the trademark for at least 5 years. You have to show that you've been using it in advertising. You have to prove that there's widespread consumer exposure. And you have to show some market research to show that the public links the trademark to you, the source. So there's some extra rules there. So if it's descriptive, really obvious, you have a couple extra hoops to jump through. And then there's generic. This is generally something you cannot get a trademark for. If I were to open a suit company called Suit Company, or a pie company called Pie Maker, or a shoe store called Shoe Store, I would not be able to get trademarks for that. They're too generic. And sometimes your product becomes so popular that despite having a trademark, it suffers genericide. This means that when people use your product to mean that entire category. So Band-Aid. People call bandages Band-Aids whether they're the Band-Aid brand or not. People call facial tissue Kleenex whether they're the Kleenex brand or not. Escalator, aspirin, trampoline, thermos, yo-yo, laundromat. These are all things that were once trademarked, but the term became so popular that they are now not legally protected. They're just a generic name that people can use for the product. If we look at these categories, I would argue that Hot Girls Read and Hot Girl Walk are both descriptive. They are pretty clear on what they mean. How did Mia even get this trademark? Yes, she invented it, but it was widespread among the walking and online communities, and nobody knew who she was. It wasn't linked to Mia, it was linked to a trend. So I genuinely don't know how these trademarks even got approved. And then it's on everybody else to have the legal resources to fight it and get it turned down in court. It's not a good system. One that didn't get quite as much attention is Tuby tape. So Tuby tape is something that's used by people with an NG tube, which is a feeding tube that goes up through your nose and into your stomach. So obviously this is a medical device that people have to use, and a lot of people just use regular old medical tape to secure the device, but some people like to use Tuby tape, which is decorative. It's a way for people who have to use this medical device to have it be slightly more personalized, have it be more comfortable. They can feel cute. They can feel like they're expressing themselves. It's just a really nice little thing that people can use to make having to use this medical device slightly more pleasant. And they've been calling it Tuby tape for years, until someone decided to trademark it. There are hundreds of people that sell decorative Tuby tape online, particularly on Etsy.
It's a term that people with feeding tubes use to kind of build a community. It's a way that we all kind of feel connected. And that term being copyrighted simply just hurts the community. A community that is already struggling for accessibility and to feel supported. And that's why a lot of us have opened up our shops. So to go out there and copyright a term that is not yours to copyright is just not moral.
But she decided to trademark it anyway and tell people to stop using that term. What's particularly gross about this one is that a lot of these people have medical issues. They're using a medical device to feed themselves. They have medical issues, which, especially here in America, can be incredibly expensive and even bankrupt you because our system is garbage. The person who trademarked it is in the UK, so that's not the lens that she was looking at it through, but there were hundreds of people who were making and selling Tuby tape in part to pay for their medical bills. People were doing this to pay for their NG tube. Something else a little gross about this is this creator was not just sending out cease and desist letters, they were mass reporting listings that used the phrase Tuby tape to Etsy. So people's entire shops were getting shut down. Not just their Tuby tape listings, their entire shops.
I hurt so many small businesses ran by disabled and chronic illness creators today. I also hurt the wider Tuby community. A lot of listings on Etsy. I reported the listings that used the words Tuby tape to sell patented medical adhesive tapes.
The trademark has since been abandoned, but the damage is done. Some people permanently lost their Etsy shops or had to start over or have been dealing with bureaucratic nonsense to get it back. So to all three of these people, Hot Girls Read, Hot Girl Walk, and Tuby tape, you cannot just think of yourself. I completely understand that when it comes to business, sometimes you have to be selfish, you have to protect yourself. But when you are trying to take away a phrase from a community, you have to think about that. Is it ethical to use a failure of the legal system to screw other people over? I would argue no. But I know that ethical lines are different for every person. And some people see it as just, well, business is business. But it's not even good business sense. Allie Rose's business is hurting. This has probably permanently hurt her business because she offended her entire community. Just because you're the first person to try and trademark something commonly used by your community, it doesn't make you the smartest. It doesn't make you the most savvy. It just means you're the first person who's been willing to screw everybody else over. You've been the first one who's been willing to take it away from everyone else for personal gain. Is that who you want to be? I have no problem with Allie Rose selling bookmarks and sweatshirts. I have no problem with Mia organizing walking events and selling merch and writing a book for some reason. I have no problem with the Tuby tape woman selling Tuby tape. But there's can you and there's should you. And maybe we need to ask that question a little bit more often. Our final case that we're going to look at today is a bit different. You may have heard of Patagonia, the clothing company, suing Patagonia, the drag queen. It's messy, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of it coming from Pattie. So a little background, Patagonia is a clothing company based in California. They were founded in 1973. They have a long history of environmental activism, and while there have been a few hiccups, they're generally considered a pretty respectable company, and particularly for a clothing company, pretty ethical. Patagonia is a drag queen, performer, and activist who lives in Oregon. I will be referring to her from now on just as Pattie to avoid confusion. Pattie does amazing work, and I hope she keeps doing it for years to come.
Wynn Wiley has gained millions of online followers for their environmental activism and performing as Patagonia. Last year, Pattie raised more than $1 million for various nonprofits while hiking 100 miles in full drag.
Patagonia, the brand, has sued Pattie, the drag queen, for $1 for trademark infringement. Now, they are also asking for legal fees back, which I get can be substantially more than $1. But Pattie can also avoid paying those by just dropping her trademark. Pattie claims that she named herself not after the clothing company, but after the region in South America. And some people believe that geographical regions shouldn't be allowed to be trademarked anyway. And you can believe that, you can think they shouldn't be trademarked, but it does happen all the time. Amazon, Colombia, Boston, these have all been trademarked, and so has Patagonia. Patagonia and Pattie have never officially worked together, but there are years of emails between them. Pattie has, like I said, done a lot of activist work, but Pattie has also worked with some of Patagonia's direct competitors, Hydro Flask, REI, North Face, and each time Patagonia has given their blessing, said, great, do your work, but here's what we're comfortable with. Here's what we're comfortable with you doing without infringing on our trademark. They haven't sent her cease and desist letters. They haven't tried to stop her from working with their competitors. They've been pretty clear about just trying to set some boundaries so that she doesn't infringe on their trademark any more than they're comfortable with. Then Pattie filed a federal trademark for Patagonia to sell outdoor clothing. And that's where the trouble started. Patagonia finally said, we have to protect our trademark. We can't let you infringe on it. We have to sue you. Now, Pattie has been wearing the Patagonia logo or some version of it for years. She's even called someone wearing Patagonia her merch.
Oh my gosh, I even see that some of you are wearing my merch. Yes, Patagonia vests are indeed very Ted drag.
She has consistently connected the two brands, Pattie's brand and Patagonia. This person received a Pattie merch sticker that is clearly based on the Patagonia logo with a handwritten note from Pattie. Now, Pattie says that all of these Patagonia logos with her name and her outline have all been fan-made. They weren't official, but she has directly participated in giving them out. So we can't prove that they've been made by any of her official businesses or official stores, but she has been closely aligned with them. And importantly, we have never seen her publicly try to stop her fans from making these Pattie versions of Patagonia logos. Frankly, Pattie has been infringing on Patagonia's logo for years, and in my opinion, from the business side of it, they've been pretty nice. But then Pattie started selling merch saying Patagonia for outdoor clothing, and she filed for a federal trademark. So we're not going to listen to the whole video because it's about 7 minutes long, but we're going to take a look at some snippets of the video that Pattie put out about this whole situation. And we're going to talk about what's true and what's maybe less than true.
Hi everyone, it's Patagonia. Today
true.
I'm breaking my silence about the lawsuit. Patagonia told the media they're only suing me for $1. What they're actually trying to do is to take away my name permanently.
No, they're not trying to take it away. They're saying you can't use it to sell outdoor clothing because they have a trademark.
And this is how corporations bully individuals who cannot match their resources. Because this would take away not only my activism and my career, but also the livelihoods of the team I employ.
But you've been doing your activism and having a career and having employees for years, and they're just now suing you because you filed a trademark. You've been doing it without a federal trademark for years. So how are they taking it away by trying to stop your trademark?
This is a betrayal of Patagonia's core mission, because if they're in business to save the home planet, why are they suing a climate activist?
Because you're infringing on their trademark.
And since 2018, I've built a community of more than 3 million people, a nonprofit teaching allyship in the outdoors, hired more than 600 artists and advocates, toured drag shows nationwide about climate solutions, and together we've raised more than $3.7 million for nonprofits.
And you did it all without a trademark. Why can't you keep doing it without a trademark?
Because there's 3 things you need to know. First, the claims of trademark infringement. I have never used their logo, font, or anything from their brand on our merch website. Instead, the lawsuit cherry picks a few examples of playful parody and fan art and tries to spin those into some kind of vast use of their logo.
There are so many examples of her using Patagonia logo, whether fan-made or not, she tied herself to it. And again, calling Patagonia clothing her merch.
Drag is built on parody, puns, and jokes, but I'm willing to never parody their logo ever again, aka never give them free PR ever again. 2, let's talk about the agreement or the understanding that people are saying I broke. There was no agreement. In 2022, when I was collaborating with a third party, Patagonia asked me to follow certain terms, and I did. That wasn't a broad agreement about my future.
No, it was an agreement that they were letting you use your name, which infringed on their trademark, without suing you. They were letting you do it and not suing you.
And 3, my trademark application. I filed my trademark application not to compete with a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but because of what happened to a drag queen named Lexi Love, whose name was taken from her by a third party after RuPaul's Drag Race. Within weeks, her bookings were canceled, music pulled, social media gone. I filed to make sure that that never happened to me.
And that's a great idea if your name doesn't already infringe on an existing trademark.
Isn't it interesting that Patagonia chose this exact moment in the height of anti-LGBTQ politics and attacks on the environment to sue me? They've known about me for 8 years, and the impact of this timing right now is serious and it's real. And I think they looked at this political moment and thought they could pull this off without pushback.
This is when you chose to file a trademark. That's what started all of this. You chose this time to file a trademark. Oh my God, she's frustrating.
And let me be very clear, do so in a classy, respectful, and peaceful way. 2, do not take this out on Patagonia store employees. They didn't choose this. It's squarely on the shoulders of their corporate leaders who have failed their employees and their company's core values.
I'm really glad that she said that. That's a very responsible thing to say, because there are crazy people, irrational people who would go out and harass store employees. So I really applaud her for making sure to say that to her fans. Is it frustrating that Pattie has spent years building this brand but can't sell merch using that name? Yes, that is really frustrating. But it's also what happens when you choose a name that might infringe on someone's legal trademark. There is a reason why drag queen Trixie Mattel doesn't use the word Mattel on any of her commercial endeavors. She uses Trixie because Mattel is a trademark. There's a reason why this drag queen is named Peppermint and not Altoids. Pattie chose a name that was potentially going to infringe on someone's existing trademark. I'm sorry that that's frustrating for you. I'm sure it is. I would be frustrated too, but you chose to do that. And Patagonia let you do a lot of stuff for a lot of years. It wasn't until you tried to file your own trademark that would infringe on theirs. Yes, there are puns and parody and wordplay in drag, and that's fantastic. But when you start trying to make money off of those parodies, it becomes a legal problem. Pattie does excellent work. I think her combination of drag with activism is amazing. She has loyal followers and she has earned them. But in this particular case, she has repeatedly misconstrued things and she has ended up coming off as disingenuous and manipulative.
Claiming that she never got any warning from the company and that the first time that she heard from its lawyers was after they filed a lawsuit. Though that also appears to be contradicted by the emails included in the lawsuit that show the company reminding Patagonia that she had agreed to not commercialize her name. Right, according to the company, they met her in 2022 and she promised not to use Patagonia on fonts or designs that mimic Patagonia.
And some of you might be thinking, yeah, she's infringing on their trademark, but she does good work. Just let her do it. Here's the problem. If you have a trademark and you do not defend it, you could lose it. Pattie's not the first person to make some sort of play on or parody of their logo. We have someone who made Catagonia, someone else who made Fratagonia. You might think that's also harmless, but think about some of the news stories that we sometimes hear about frats. I know absolutely nothing about this particular frat. They could be completely upstanding and wonderful human beings, but we do hear news stories about hazing, alcohol addiction, death, sexual assault. These are all things that we hear about from frats. So if this frat uses the Patagonia branding and then they do something horrible, that could hurt Patagonia the brand. If some right-wing environment-hating group starts using something similar to Patagonia's branding and Patagonia wants to legally stop them, the judge might say, well, you didn't protect your trademark against Fratagonia or Catagonia or Patagonia, so no, you can't protect it now. Let me tell you a little story about Apple Corps and Apple computers. Apple Corps was created by the Beatles in the 60s, and to this day, it still controls their trademarks and brands and merch type things. Apple computers, now just Apple, you know them. You might be watching a video on an Apple device. I'm recording on an Apple device, so twins. In 1978, Apple Corps sued Apple Computers for trademark infringement. Apple Computers agreed to stay out of the music business. They agreed not to do anything with music, and the case was settled. Apple Corps sued Apple Computers again in 1989. They said that the computer's ability to play MIDI files and music was too close, and they were infringing on their trademark. Apple Computers said, okay, we won't go any further into music, and they settled. Apple Corps sued Apple Computer again in 2003 because Apple Computers opened iTunes, clearly violating the promise they made to stay out of music. Apple Corps lost. Not only did they lose, in the end, Apple Computers ended up with all trademarks relating to Apple and music. Apple Corps now licenses use of those trademarks from Apple Computers. So Apple Corps settled twice. They tried to just go with an agreement saying, hey, please don't do music. Please don't do music. Please don't do music. And they ended up losing their entire trademark. If you don't defend a trademark, you could lose it. If Patagonia wants to be able to protect their trademark, protect their reputation, protect their brand, protect people who they do not align with from using it, they have to protect it. And that includes from activist drag queens. Whew. All this legal stuff is exhausting. I think the big takeaway is talk to actual lawyers who know about trademark law before trying to trademark something. Ask them to look into common law usage. Ask them if you got the trademark, would it hold up in court? And remember, when it comes to trademarking something that's used by other people, don't just ask, can I? Ask, should I? In honor of today's topic, I have made a donation to a local law clinic. This is done through a law school where newly licensed lawyers are paired up with small businesses to help them with their legal needs, including setting up and protecting their trademark. Thank you again for watching. Like I said in the beginning, I am a new channel, so anything you can do to support the channel is hugely appreciated. Just by watching it, you're supporting the channel, and I thank you. But if you want to help more, liking the video, commenting on the video, or subscribing to the channel are all incredibly helpful things you can do too. And also come back and watch next week.